Hello. It's not my favorite thumbnail that I've ever taken. Also, sorry I'm a little late. Sometimes when my computer starts up, she takes a minute to get her act together and turn on all the way. This morning I've only had breakfast so far because I woke up super late, which was really nice. But I had poached eggs on toast, which is my most favorite of the breakfast foods. And it was really delicious. Whenever I have poached eggs on toast, like I know I don't want more, but I kind of do. I kind of, would like a whole other one, but I don't. But I want to, but I don't, because I'm full. Okay. I'm going to answer a lot of emails today, do a lot of little things that I've been meaning to do but haven't done. Like look at my finances, which is horrifying, always. I've lost my one friend. They went away. I'm feeling very down. Nobody's watching these. I don't know what I need to do or be left. I'd like to do more, and I thought we wanted to do more, but I maybe not. I don't know. It's okay. Um, ooh, it was sounded good, but then it didn't. Okay, so let's do this. What happened yesterday in Northanger Abbey for me and my party of none? Yesterday in Northanger Abbey, this is upsetting. Yesterday in Northanger Abbey, there was another ball, and they went, and Isabella was like, "You can't persuade me to dance with anyone." And Catherine was like, "Okay, cool. Yeah, like I'll make sure that nobody tries to dance with you." So Henry Tilney's brother, Captain Tilney, comes over and he's like, "Hey, can I dance with her?" And Catherine's like, "No, she said she wasn't going to dance tonight for like anything in the world. So sorry." He's like, "Oh, fine." So he walks off. And then later, Catherine looks across the dance floor, and what does her wondering eyes to appear? But oops, that's weird. I didn't know that could do that. What to her wondering eyes should appear but Captain Tilney asking Isabella to dance, and Isabella accepting. And Catherine's like, hmm. So let me turn this on. So Catherine's like, okay. She talks to Isabella later. Isabella's like, what was I gonna do? Like, he was so insistent. He said that he wouldn't dance with anyone but me. So, like, I had to do it. And Catherine was like, okay. So then later, Catherine's talking with Isabella and Isabella's mom. And they're talking about the fortune that Mr. Moreland has agreed to give them. And when I say them, I mean James and Isabella. And Isabella and her mom are kind of like, it's like small. It's like not a big deal, but like it's like a little small. And I'm just like kind of wondering, like, is that like all he can give? And Catherine's like, yeah, why would he give you any less than like he could give? And they're like, no, 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 that's not what we were saying. Like, it's no issue for me. Like, I don't care about the money. I'm just like, what about James? Like, doesn't he deserve a little more? And Catherine's like, what are you saying? And Isabella's like, nothing, nothing, nothing. Like, I'm just worried because, you know, I just he won't get it for such a long time. And I'm just sad that it's gonna take us 2.5 years to get married. That's all. Nothing else. Like I have no other issues. So my prediction is Isabella's gonna want to get with Tilney, Captain Tilney, because maybe he's gonna have more money. And it turns out that's what she's about. So let's go. Let's see what happens in this chapter of Northanger Abbey. Okay. Northanger Abbey, Volume 2, Chapter 2. The Allens had now entered on the 6th week of their stay in Bath, and whether it should be the last was for some time a question to which Catherine listened with a beating heart. To have her acquaintance with the Tilneys end so soon was an evil which nothing could counterbalance. Her whole happiness seemed at stake. Excuse me. Her whole happiness seemed at stake while the affair was in suspense, and everything secured when it was determined that the lodgings should be taken for another fortnight. What this additional fortnight was to produce to be her What this additional fortnight was to produce to her beyond the pleasure of sometimes seeing Henry Tilney made but a small part of Catherine's speculation. Once or twice, indeed, since James's engagement had taught her what could be done, she had got so far as to indulge in a secret perhaps, but in general the felicity of being with him for the present bounded her views. The present was now comprised in another 3 weeks, with her happiness being certain for that period. The rest of her life was at such a distance as to excite but little interest. In the course of the morning which saw this business arranged, she visited Miss Tilney and poured forth her joyful feelings. It was doomed to be the day of trial. No sooner had she expressed her delight in Mr. Allen's lengthened stay than Miss Tilney told her of her father's having just determined upon quitting Bath by the end of another week. Here was a blow. The past suspense of the morning had been ease and quiet to the present disappointment. Catherine's countenance fell, and in a voice of most sincere concern, she echoed Miss Tilney's concluding words. By the end of another week? Yes, my father can seldom be prevailed on to give Waters what I think a fair trial. He's been disappointed of some friend's arrival whom he expected to meet here, and he is now pretty well and is in a hurry to get home. I am very sorry for it, Catherine dejectedly. If I had known this before... Hold on, listen. Oh, that was a good sneeze. Good sneeze. If I had known this before, perhaps, said Miss Tilney in an embarrassed manner, it would be so good. It would make me very happy if... The entrance of her father put a stop to the civility which Catherine was beginning to hope might introduce a desire of their corresponding. After addressing her with his usual politeness, he turned to his daughter and said, Well, Eleanor, may I congratulate you on being successful in your application to your fair friend? I was just beginning to make the request, sir, as you came in. Well, proceed by all means. I know how much your heart is in it. My daughter, Miss Morland, he continued without leaving his daughter time to speak, has been forming a very bold wish. We leave Bath, as she perhaps told you, on Saturday Senate. A letter from my steward tells me that my presence is wanted at home, and being disappointed in my hopes of seeing the Marquis of Longtown and General Courtenay here, some of my very old friends, there is nothing to detain me longer at Bath. And could we carry our selfish point with you, we should leave it without a single regret. Can you, in short, be prevailed on to quit this scene of public triumph, and oblige your friend Eleanor in your company in Gloucestershire? I am almost ashamed to make the request, though its presumption would certainly appear greater to every creature in Bath than yourself. Modesty such as yours, but not for the world, I would paint it by open praise. If you can be induced to honor us with a visit, you will make us happy beyond expression. 'Tis true, we can offer you nothing like the gaieties of this lively place. We can tempt you neither by amusement nor splendor, for our mode of living, as you see, is plain and unpretending. Yet no endeavors shall be waiting on our side to make Northanger Abbey not wholly disagreeable. Nor at last! At last! What is this, 17 chapters in? Northanger Abbey. These were thrilling words, and wound up Catherine's feelings to the highest point of ecstasy. Her grateful and gratified heart could hardly restrain its expression with the language of tolerable calmness. To receive so flattering an invitation, to have her company so warmly solicited, everything honorable and soothing, every present enjoyment, and every future hope was contained in it, and her acceptance, with only the saving clause of Papa and Mamma's approbation, was eagerly given. I will write home directly, said she. They do not object. I dare say they will not. General Tilney was not less sanguine, having already waited on her excellent friends in Pulteney Street, and obtained their sanction of his wishes. Since they can consent to part with you, said he, we may expect philosophy from all the world. Miss Tilney was earnest, though gentle, in her secondary civilities, and the affair became in a few minutes as nearly settled as this necessary reference to Fullerton would allow. The circumstances of the morning had led Catherine's feelings through the varieties of suspense, security, and disappointment, but now they were safely lodged in perfect bliss, and with spirits elated to rapture, with Henry at her heart and Northanger Abbey on her lips, she hurried home to write her letter. Mr. and Mrs. Morland, relying on the discretion of the friends to whom they had already entrusted their daughter, felt no doubt of the propriety of an acquaintance which had been formed under their eye, and sent therefore by return of post their ready consent to her visit in Gloucestershire. This indulgence, though not more than Catherine had hoped for, completed her conviction of being favored beyond every other human creature, in friends and fortune, circumstances and chance. Everything seemed to cooperate for her advantage. By the kindness of her first friends, the Allens, she had been introduced into scenes where pleasures of every kind had met her. Her feelings, her preferences had each known the happiness of a return. Wherever she felt attachment, she had been able to create it. The affection of Isabella was to be secured to her in a sister. The Tilneys, they, by whom above all she desired to be favorably thought of, outstripped even her wishes in the flattering measures by which their intimacy was to be continued. She was their chosen visitor. I lost it. There we go. She was to be for weeks under the same roof with the person whose society she most prized. And in addition to all the rest, this roof was to be the roof of an abbey. Her passion for ancient edifices was next in degree to her passion for Henry Tilney, and castles and abbeys made usually the charm of those reveries which his image did not fill. To see and explore either the ramparts and keep of the one, or the cloisters of the other, had been for many weeks a darling wish, though to be more than a visitor of an hour had seemed too nearly impossible for desire. And yet this was to happen. With all the chances against her of house, hall, place, park, court, and cottage, Northanger turned up an abbey, and she was to be its inhabitant. Its long, damp passages, its narrow cells, and ruined chapel were to be within her daily reach, and she could not entirely subdue the hope of some traditional legends, some awful memorials of an injured and ill-fated nun. It was wonderful that her friend should seem so little elated by the possession of such a home, that the consciousness of it should be so meekly borne. The power of early habit could account for it. A distinction to which they had been born gave no pride. Their superiority of abode was no more to them than their superiority of person. Many were the inquiries she was eager to make of Miss Tilney, but so active were her thoughts, and that when these inquiries were answered, she was hardly more assured than before of Northanger Abbey having been a richly endowed convent at the time of the Reformation, of its having fallen into the hands of an ancestor of the Tilneys on its dissolution, of a large portion of the ancient building still making a part of the present dwelling, although the rest was decayed, or of its standing low in a valley, sheltered from the north and east by rising woods of oak. Okay. I'm going to read another chapter, so we got the time. Northanger Abbey, Volume 2, Chapter 3. With a mind full of happiness, Catherine was hardly aware that 2 or 3 days had passed away without her seeing Isabella for more than a few minutes together. She first began to be sensible of this, and to sigh for her conversation, as she walked along the pump room one morning by Mrs. Allen's side, without anything to say or to hear, and scarcely had she felt a 5 minutes' longing of friendship, before the object of it appeared, and inviting her to a secret conference, led the way to a seat. "This is my favorite place," said she, as they sat down on a bench between the doors, which commanded a tolerable view of everybody entering at either. "It is so out of the way." Catherine, observing that Isabella's eyes were continually bent towards one door or the other, as in eager expectation, and remembering how often she had been falsely accused of being arch, thought the present a fine opportunity for being really so, and therefore gaily said, "Do not be uneasy, Isabella. James will be here soon." "James will soon be here." "Psh, my dear creature," she replied, "do not think of me such a simpleton as to be always waiting to confine him to my elbow. It would be hideous to be always together. We should be the jest of the place. And so you are going to Northanger. I am amazingly glad of it. It is one of the finest old places in England, I understand. I shall depend on a most particular description of it." "You shall certainly have the best in my power to give. But who are you looking for? Are your sisters coming?" "I'm not looking for anybody. One's eyes must be somewhere, and you know what a foolish trick I have of fixing mine when my thoughts are 100 miles off. I'm amazingly absent. I believe I'm the most absent creature in the world. Tilney says it's always the case with the mind of a certain stamp." "But I thought, Isabella, you had something in particular to tell me." "Oh, yes, and so I have, but here is a proof of what I was saying. My poor head. I had quite forgot it. Well, the thing is, I have just had a letter from John. You can guess the contents." "No, indeed I cannot." "My sweet love, do not be so abominably affected. What can he write About but yourself. You know he is head over ears in love with you. With me, dear Isabella? Nay, my sweetest Catherine, this is being quite absurd. Modesty and all that is very well in its way, but really a little common honesty is sometimes quite becoming. I have no idea of being so overstrained. It is fishing for compliments. His attentions were such as a child must have noticed. And it was but half an hour before he left Bath that you gave him the most positive encouragement. He says so in his letter, says that he as good as made you an offer, that you received his advances in the kindest way, and now he wants me to urge his suite and say that all manners of pretty things to you, so it is vain to affect ignorance. Catherine, with all the earnestness of truth, expressed her astonishment at such a charge, protesting her innocence of every thought of Mr. Thorpe's being in love with her, and the consequent impossibility of her having ever intended to encourage him. As to any intentions on his side, I do declare upon my honor I would never was sensible of them for a moment, except just his asking me to dance the first day of his coming. And as to make me an offer or anything like that, there must be some unaccountable mistake. I could not have misunderstood a thing of that kind, you know. And as I ever wish to be believed, I solemnly protest that not a syllable of such a nature ever passed between us. The last half an hour before he went away, it must all be completely a mistake, for I did not see him once that whole morning. But that you certainly did, for you spent the whole morning in Edgar's building. It was the day of your father's consent came, and I am pretty sure that you and John were alone in the parlor some time before you left the house. Are you? Well, if you say it was so, I dare say, but for the life of me I cannot recollect it. I do remember now being with you and seeing him as well as the rest, but that we were ever alone for 5 minutes. However, it is not worth arguing about, for whatever might pass on his side, you must be convinced from my having no recollection of it, that I never thought, nor expected, nor wished for anything of the kind from him. I am excessively concerned that he should have any regard for me, but indeed it has been quite unintentional on my side. I never had the smallest idea of it. Pray, undeceive him as soon as you can, and tell him I beg his pardon. That is, I do not know what I ought to say, but make him understand what I mean in the properest way. I would not speak disrespectfully of a brother of yours, Isabella, I'm sure, but you know very well that if I could think of one man more than another, he is not the person. Isabella was silent. My dear friend, you must not be angry with me. I cannot suppose your brother cares so very much about me. And you know, we shall still be sisters. Yes, yes, with a blush. There are more ways than one of our being sisters. But where am I wandering to? Well, my dear Catherine, the case seems to be that you are determined against poor John. Is not it so? I certainly cannot return his affection, and as certainly never meant to encourage it. Since that is the case, I am sure I shall not tease you any further. John desired me to speak to you on the subject, and therefore I have. But I confess, as soon as I read his letter, I thought it very foolish, imprudent business, and not likely to promote the good of either, for what were you to live upon, supposing you came together? You have both of something, to be sure, but it is not a trifle that will support a family nowadays, and after all that romancers may say, there is no doing without money. I only wonder John could think of it. He could not have received my last. You do acquit me then of anything wrong? You are convinced that I never meant to deceive your brother. Never suspected him of liking me till this moment. Oh, as to that, answered Isabella laughingly, I do not pretend to determine what your thoughts and designs in time past may have been. All that is best known to yourself. A little harmless flirtation or so will occur, and one is often drawn on to give more encouragement than one wishes to stand by. But you may be assured that I am the last person in the world to judge you severely. All those things should be allowed, for in youth and high spirits, what one means one day, one may not mean the next. Circumstances change, opinions alter. But my opinion of your brother never did alter. It was always the same. You are describing what never happened. My dearest Catherine, continued the other without at all listening to her, I would not for all the world be the means of hurrying you into an engagement before you knew what you were about. I do not think anything would justify me in wishing you to sacrifice all your happiness, merely to oblige my brother because he is my brother, and who perhaps after all might just be just as happy without you, for people seldom know what they would be at. Young men especially, they're so amazingly changeable and inconstant.
What I say is, why should a brother's happiness be dearer to me than a friend's? You know I carry my notions of friendship pretty high, but above all things, my dear Catherine, do not be in a hurry. Take my word for it that if you are in too great a hurry, you will certainly live to repent it. Tilney says there is nothing people are so often deceived in as the state of their own affections, and I believe he is very right. Ah, here he comes. Never mind, he will not see us, I'm sure. Catherine looked up, perceived Captain Tilney and Isabella, earnestly fixing her eye on him as she spoke, soon caught his notice. He approached immediately and took a seat to which her movements invited him. His first address made Catherine start. Though spoken low, she could distinguish. What? Always to be watched in person or by proxy? Pshaw, nonsense, was Isabella's answer in the same half whisper. Why do you put such things into my head? If I could believe it. My spirit, you know, is pretty independent. I officially do not like Isabella. Um, I wish your heart were independent. That would be enough for me. My heart, indeed. What can you have to do with hearts? You men are none. You men have none of you any hearts. We do not have hearts. We have eyes, and they give us torment enough. What is happening? Catherine is just like, um, um, do they? I am sorry for it. I am sorry they find anything so disagreeable for me. I will look another way. I hope this pleases you, turning her back on him. I hope your eyes are not tormented now. Oh my God. They're perfect for each other. Never more so, for the edge of a blooming cheek is still in view, and once too much and too little. Catherine heard all this, and quite out of countenance could listen no not longer. Amazed that Isabella could endure it, and jealous for her brother, she rose up, and saying she should join Mrs. Allen, proposed their walking. But for this Isabella showed no inclination. She was so amazingly tired, and it was so odious to parade about the pump room. If she moved from her seat, she should miss her sisters. She was expecting her sister every moment, so that her dearest Catherine must excuse her and must sit quietly down again. But Catherine could be stubborn too, and Mrs. Allen just then coming up to their and Mrs. Allen just then coming up to propose their returning home, she joined her and walked out of the pump room, leaving Isabella still sitting with Captain Tilney. With much uneasiness did she thus leave them. It seemed to her that Captain Tilney was falling in love with Isabella, and Isabella unconsciously encouraging him. Unconsciously it must be, for Isabella's attachment to James was as certain and well acknowledged as her engagement. To doubt her truth or good intentions was impossible, and yet, during the whole of their conversation, her manner had been odd. She wished Isabella had talked more like her usual self, and not so much about money, and had not looked so well pleased at the sight of Captain Tilney. How strange that she should not perceive his admiration! Catherine longed to give her a hint of it, to put her on her guard and prevent all the pain which her too lively behavior might otherwise create for both him and her brother. The compliment of John Thorpe's affection did not make amends for this thoughtlessness in his sister. She was almost as far from believing as from wishing it to be sincere, for she had not forgotten that he could mistake, and his and his assertion of the offer and of her encouragement convinced her that his mistakes could sometimes be very egregious. In vanity, therefore, she gained but little. Her chief profit was in wonder. That he should think it was worth his while to fancy himself in love with her was a matter of lively astonishment. Isabella talked of his attentions. She had never been sensible of any, but Isabella had said many things which she hoped had been spoken in haste, and would never be said again, and upon this she was glad to rest altogether for present ease and comfort. And that, honestly, I could probably do another one. I'm going to hold off. All right. Well, that is the end for today. She's really got herself in a pickle. She's gonna end up with Captain Tilney. I don't know what's gonna happen to Catherine. We can only hope. I still don't love Henry Tilney as her match. He just seems so like, okay. But all right, Jane, I'll go with it. I will go with it indeed. All right. That's all for today. I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow is Thursday, so I will be in at 1:30. Have a good time.
and I don't know, do something fun today. Do something fun today. Okie dokie. Goodbye. Goodbye. I'm leaving.